Lisa Martinez walked through the long metal hallways of Kepler Station with her coffee cup in hand. The morning felt like any other morning she had experienced in the past 2 years. She was a lieutenant commander in the Galactic Defense Coalition, and today was supposed to be just another war briefing. Nothing special, nothing different. Just another meeting about the ongoing fight against the Void Reapers. The coffee tasted bitter, but Lisa drank it anyway. She had learned to drink almost anything during her time in space. Earth coffee was expensive out here, and the station coffee was made from some kind of alien beans that barely passed for the real thing. Still, it gave her the energy she needed to face another day of reports and strategic planning. Kepler Station was huge. It took Lisa 15 minutes to walk from her quarters to the briefing room, even when she took the fastest route. The station housed over 50,000 beings from dozens of different species. Humans made up only about 10% of the population. The rest were aliens who had joined the coalition to fight against the REAPRS. As she walked, Lisa past groups of different aliens going about their daily routines. The Zentari moved slowly and deliberately, with their tall crystalline bodies catching the light from the station's artificial suns. They never seemed to be in a hurry about anything. The Aquarians floated in their mobile water tanks, making soft, humming sounds to each other. Their tentacles moved in patterns that Lisa had learned meant they were discussing philosophy or art. The insect-like HFY clicked and buzzed as they scurried past in perfect formation. Lisa had grown used to being surrounded by aliens, but she still felt more comfortable around other humans. There was something about being able to look someone in the eye and know they understood things the same way you did. The aliens were good people, but they thought differently about everything: time, war, life, death. Sometimes Lisa wondered if humans and aliens would ever really understand each other. She reached the briefing room 10 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to start. Lisa liked to be early. It gave her time to review her notes and prepare for questions. The briefing room was large, with a circular table in the center and holographic projectors hanging from the ceiling. The walls were covered with screens showing maps and data feeds from across Coalition space. Jake Sullivan was already there when Lisa arrived. He sat in his usual spot near the back of the room, with his feet up on the table and his hands behind his head. Jake was older than Lisa by about 10 years and had been a Marine before joining the coalition. He had short brown hair that was starting to show gray at the temples and scars on his hands from years of military service. Jake was the kind of man who could sleep anywhere and eat anything. He had a joke for every situation and never seemed to worry about anything. "Morning sunshine," Jake said when he saw Lisa come in. "Ready for another thrilling presentation about how we're all going to die horribly in space?" Lisa sat down next to Jake and opened her datapad. "You're cheerful today." "I'm always cheerful. It's my natural charm that makes me so popular with the alien folks." Jake grinned and took a sip from his own coffee cup. "Besides, someone has to keep morale up around here. These briefings get depressing fast." More coalition members began filing into the room. Admiral Velketh of the Zentari entered with their usual slow, dignified walk. Velketh was tall even by Zentari standards, with crystal formations growing from their head that caught the light like a crown. They moved to the front of the room and began setting up the holographic display. Commander Aqua 7 of the Aquarians rolled in next in their mobile tank. The tank was filled with blue-green water, and Aqua 7 floated inside like a jellyfish. Their tentacles pressed against the glass as they communicated with other Aquarians through some kind of telepathic link. The HFY delegation came in as a group of 6 individuals who moved in perfect synchronization. They took their seats without making a sound and immediately began clicking to each other in their mathematical language. Lisa had learned that they were probably calculating probability matrices for different battle scenarios. Other species representatives filled the remaining seats. The blue-skinned Rigelians with their large black eyes, the furry Canonoids who looked like upright wolves, the rock-like Lithians who barely moved at all during meetings. Each species brought their own perspective to the war effort, but sometimes Lisa wondered if that made things better or worse. Vel Keth activated the holographic display and the room lights dimmed. We will begin today's strategic briefing regarding Void Reaper activities in Sector 7, they announced in their slow, careful voice. Please direct your attention to the primary display. The first slide appeared in the air above the table. It showed a three-dimensional map of space with red dots marking Reaper fleet positions. Lisa had seen dozens of slides like this one. The Reapers were always moving, always attacking, always destroying colonies and space stations across the Outer Rim. Intelligence reports indicate standard Reaper movement patterns in this sector, Valketh continued. Fleet strength remains consistent with previous observations. Estimated vessel count is between 40 and 60 ships. Jake yawned loudly. Same old, he whispered to Lisa. Wake me up when something interesting happens. The second slide replaced the first one. This one showed supply routes and trade lanes. Green lines represented safe passages, while red lines showed areas under Reaper control. Lisa made notes on her datapad about convoy schedules and escort requirements. It was routine work but important for keeping the coalition supplied and functional. Supply line vulnerability has increased by 12% over the past month, Valketh reported. We recommend additional patrol ships in sectors 4 through 9. Lisa glanced at Jake, who was drawing pictures on his datapad instead of taking notes. He had drawn what looked like a stick figure riding a rocket ship. She shook her head and went back to her own notes. Then Valketh activated the third slide and everything changed. The holographic display showed real-time sensor data from the Outer Rim. A massive red cloud appeared in space representing something huge and dangerous. Numbers scrolled across the bottom of the display showing fleet strength estimates and movement vectors. Alert, Valketh said, and their voice carried a tone Lisa had never heard before. Long-range sensors have detected a major Reaper fleet movement. Fleet strength estimated at over 200 vessels. Current trajectory indicates target destination. Blue dough appeared on the display. Next to it appeared the words that made Lisa's blood run cold. New Terra, population 2.3 billion. Estimated time to bombardment 47 minutes. The room erupted in noise as every species began reacting according to their nature. The Zentari started talking in their slow, measured voices about protocols and procedures. The Aquarians began humming in harmony, which Lisa knew meant they were seeking guidance from their collective consciousness. The Hivari clicked rapidly as they calculated odds and probabilities, but Jake Sullivan had gone completely silent. Lisa looked at her friend and felt a chill run down her spine. The man who always had a joke was staring at the display with an expression she had never seen before. His hands were perfectly still on the table. His breathing had become slow and controlled. His eyes had taken on a look that reminded Lisa of documentaries she had seen about predators in the wild. Something had awakened in Jake Sullivan, and Lisa was not sure she wanted to know what it was. The silence that had fallen over Jake Sullivan was unlike anything Lisa had ever witnessed. She had known Jake for 2 years and had never seen him quiet for more than 30 seconds. He was the kind of person who filled empty air with jokes and stories and complaints about the food in the station cafeteria. But now he sat perfectly still while chaos erupted around them in the briefing room. Admiral Valketh was trying to maintain order, but the different species were all reacting in their own ways. The Zentari had formed a small circle and were speaking in their slow, deliberate manner about evacuation protocols and diplomatic channels. The Aquarians were humming louder now, and their tentacles moved in complex patterns against the glass of their tanks. The Hivari clicked and buzzed as they shared calculations about fleet movements and orbital mechanics. Lisa watched Jake's face and felt something cold settle in her stomach. His eyes had changed. The warm brown eyes that usually held laughter and mischief now looked like chips of stone. His jaw was set in a hard line, and the muscles in his neck stood out like cables. He was breathing slowly and deeply through his nose like someone preparing for physical combat. "Jake," Lisa whispered, "are you okay?" He did not answer. He did not even look at her. His gaze was locked on the holographic display where the numbers continued to count down. 45 minutes to bombardment, 44 minutes. 43 minutes. New Terra was not just another colony world to Jake Sullivan. Lisa knew that his sister Karen lived there with her husband and 3 children. They had moved to New Terra 5 years ago when Karen's husband got a job with the Agricultural Development Program. Jake talked about them all the time. He showed pictures of his nephews playing in the red dirt of their new world. He sent them care packages filled with Earth chocolate and old movies. 2.3 billion people lived on New Terra, and 3 of them were the most important people in Jake Sullivan's life. Admiral Velketh was still trying to conduct the briefing in their methodical way. "We must follow proper emergency procedures," they announced. "All colony worlds have evacuation protocols. We will contact the planetary government and begin organizing transport ships." "How long will that take?" asked Commander Aqua 7 through the translation device attached to their tank. "Approximately 6 to 8 hours to organize a full evacuation fleet," Velketh replied. "We must also consider diplomatic options. Perhaps the Reapers will accept negotiation." That was when Jake Sullivan stood up, the sound of his chair scraping against the metal floor cut through all the alien chatter like a knife. Every being in the room turned to look at him. Lisa felt her heart start beating faster because she recognized something in the way Jake moved. She had seen it before in combat veterans when they were pushed too far. It was the way a person moved when they had stopped thinking about consequences and started thinking about survival. Jake's face was completely calm, but his eyes burned with an inner fire that made Lisa think of old stories about human warriors going into battle. He looked around the room at all the different species, talking about protocols and evacuation schedules and diplomatic solutions. Then he looked directly at Admiral Velketh. 42 minutes? Jake said quietly. His voice was different too. Gone was the casual tone he used for jokes and complaints. This voice was flat and controlled and somehow more dangerous than shouting would have been. "Commander Sullivan, please return to your seat," Velketh said in their careful diplomatic tone. "We must discuss the situation according to proper procedures." Jake did not sit down. Instead, he began walking toward the door with smooth, controlled steps. Lisa had seen Marines move like that during combat exercises. It was the walk of someone who had made a decision and would not be stopped by anything short of physical force. "Jake, where are you going?" Lisa called out. He paused at the doorway and looked back at her. For a moment, the old Jake seemed to flicker behind his eyes. "My sister makes apple pie," he said softly. "The best apple pie in 3-star systems. Her kids love it when she makes it for their birthdays." Then the moment passed and the stone-faced warrior was back. 41 minutes, Jake said and walked out of the briefing room. Lisa jumped up to follow him, but Admiral Velketh raised one crystalline hand. "Lieutenant Commander Martinez, please remain for the briefing. We have much to discuss regarding evacuation procedures." "You don't understand," Lisa said. "Jake isn't thinking about evacuation procedures. He's thinking about his family. All coalition members must follow proper protocols during emergency situations," Velketh replied. "Individual emotional responses cannot be allowed to compromise." Official policy. Lisa looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at her. They meant well. They were good people who wanted to help. But they did not understand what she was beginning to realize. They did not understand what it meant to be human when someone threatened your family. The Zentari thought in terms of logical procedures and careful planning. The Aquarians sought guidance from their collective consciousness. The Hivari calculated probabilities and mathematical outcomes. All of them approached problems with the calm patience of species that had evolved on worlds where cooperation and careful thought were the keys to survival, but humans had evolved on Earth, where massive predators hunted in packs. Earth, where natural disasters could wipe out entire civilizations without warning. Earth, where survival often meant making split-second decisions with incomplete information and then fighting with everything you had to protect what mattered most. Jake Sullivan was not thinking like a coalition officer anymore. He was thinking like a human from Earth, like a Deathworlder who had just learned that someone was threatening his family. The briefing continued around Lisa, but she was not listening anymore. Her mind was racing as she tried to figure out what Jake might do. She knew he had access to coalition military resources. She knew he had combat training and experience with weapon systems. She also knew that he had been working on some kind of personal project in his spare time, though he had never told her what it was. Admiral Velketh was explaining evacuation timelines when the emergency sirens began to sound throughout Kepler Station. The loud wailing noise filled the briefing room and red lights began flashing on all the walls. Lisa felt her stomach drop because she knew what those sirens meant. Someone had just launched an unauthorized military vessel from the station. What is happening? Velketh asked as they activated their communication device. A voice crackled through the speakers. It was the station traffic controller, and they sounded confused and alarmed. Admiral, we have an unauthorized launch from Hangar Bay 7. The vessel is not responding to communication attempts and has set course for the outer rim at maximum burn. Lisa closed her eyes and felt everything click into place. Hangar Bay 7 was where Jake kept his personal project. She had seen him working there late at night when she walked past on her way to the observation deck. She had assumed he was just tinkering with some old equipment to pass the time. Now she realized what he had really been doing. Which vessel has been taken? Velketh demanded. The UCS Retribution, sir, came the reply. Modified human assault. Craft. Pilot has been identified as Commander Jake Sullivan. Lisa opened her eyes and saw every alien in the room looking at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to alarm. They did not understand what was happening. They could not comprehend why someone would steal a military ship and fly directly toward a fleet of 200 enemy vessels. But Lisa understood perfectly. Jake Sullivan was not running away from the problem. He was not following evacuation protocols or waiting for diplomatic solutions. He was doing what humans had always done when their families were threatened. He was going to fight. The countdown display still showed 38 minutes until the Reaper fleet reached New Terra. Jake had 38 minutes to cross the space between Kepler Station and the Outer Rim. 38 minutes to somehow stop 200 enemy warships from destroying his sister's world. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of thing that made other species call humans. Deathworlders Dot and Lisa Martinez realized with growing horror that she was probably about to watch her best friend die trying to do the impossible. Lisa ran through the corridors of Kepler Station faster than she had ever run in her life. Her heart pounded against her ribs and her breath came in short gasps as she pushed past groups of aliens who were reacting to the emergency sirens in their own unique ways. The Zentari had formed orderly discussion circles in the hallways and were debating proper emergency procedures. The Aquarians had gathered around their public meditation pools and were humming in low harmonious tones. The Hivari moved in tight mathematical formations while clicking out what Lisa assumed were probability calculations, but Lisa was not thinking about alien emergency protocols. She was thinking about Jake Sullivan and the look in his eyes when he had walked out of the briefing room. She had seen that look before in human soldiers who had reached their breaking point. It was the look of someone who had stopped caring about rules and regulations and started caring only about protecting what mattered most to them. The emergency announcements echoed through the station corridors as Lisa ran. All personnel report to designated emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The voice belonged to Station Commander Torres, who sounded like he was trying very hard to maintain calm while dealing with a situation that was spinning rapidly out of control. Lisa reached Hangar Bay 7 just as the massive doors were sliding shut. She squeezed through the gap and found herself in a cavernous space filled with the smell of rocket fuel and heated metal. The hangar was designed to hold 6 ships, but only 5 remained in their designated parking spots. The 6th spot was empty except for scorch marks on the deck where engine flames had burned during an unauthorized launch. Maintenance. Chief Rodriguez was standing near the empty space with a datapad in his hands and a confused expression on his face. He was a short, stocky man who had been working on Kepler Station since it was first built. Lisa had never seen him look anything other than completely in control of his domain. Chief, what happened here? Lisa asked as she approached him. Rodriguez looked up from his data pad and shook his head. Craziest thing I ever saw, Commander. Jake Sullivan came in here about 10 minutes ago and started prepping the retribution for launch. I told him he needed proper authorization and flight clearance, but he just ignored me. Moved like he was in some kind of trance. Did he say anything? Only one thing. When I tried to stop him from entering the ship, he looked at me and said 35 minutes, just like that. 35 minutes. Then he sealed the hatch and fired up the engines. Lisa felt her stomach twist into knots. Jake was counting down the time until the Reaper fleet reached New Terra. Every second that passed was 1 second closer to 2.3 billion people dying in orbital bombardment, including his sister Karen and her 3 children. Chief, tell me about the retribution. What kind of ship is it? Rodriguez scratched his head and consulted his data pad. Modified human assault craft. Jake's been working on it for months in his spare time. Said it was a hobby project. I let him use the hangar space because he wasn't bothering anyone and he knows his way around ship systems. What kind of modifications? That's the weird part, Commander. Most of the work was on the cargo bay and the power systems. Jake installed some kind of experimental energy core that he said came from a decommissioned Earth battleship. Drew way more power than a ship that size should need. I asked him what he was planning to do with all that energy, but he just smiled and said it was for a special occasion. Lisa closed her eyes and tried to think. Jake had been planning something for months. He had modified a ship with experimental technology and enough power to run a small space station. The question was what he intended to do with it. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message. Lisa activated it and Admiral Velketh's crystalline face appeared on the small screen. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, please report to the command center immediately. We have a developing situation that requires human insight. Lisa ran through the station corridors again, but this time toward the command center instead of away from it. The command center was located at the heart of Kepler Station and served as the coordination point for all coalition military operations in the sector. When Lisa arrived, she found it filled with officers from every member species, all talking at once in a dozen different languages. Admiral Velketh stood at the center of the chaos next to a large holographic display that showed the current tactical situation. Jake's ship appeared as a small blue dot moving at maximum speed toward the edge of coalition space. The massive Reaper fleet showed as a red cloud of destruction bearing down on New Terra. Commander Martinez, Velketh said when they saw her. Approach. We need you to help us understand Commander Sullivan's intentions. His ship is not responding to communication attempts and his current course will take him directly into the Reaper fleet. Lisa looked at the display and felt her heart sink. The numbers were simple and brutal. Jake had 1 small modified assault craft. The Reapers had over 200 warships, including massive battlecruisers and planet-killing dreadnoughts. It was not a battle, it was suicide. He's going to try to stop them, Lisa said quietly. The command center fell silent. Every alien officer turned to stare at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to disbelief. Commander Martinez, said Captain Thresh 9 of the Zentari Defense Corps, you cannot be serious. 1 ship against 200 is not tactical engagement. It is self-destruction with no possible benefit. You don't understand, Lisa replied. Jake's sister lives on New Terra, her children live there. When humans think their family is in danger, they don't calculate odds or consider tactical advantages, they just fight. Commander Aqua 7 floated closer to the discussion in their mobile tank. The fighting without hope of victory serves no logical purpose. Commander Sullivan's sacrifice will not save the colony world. Maybe not, Lisa said. But he's going to try anyway, because that's what humans do. We don't give up on the people we love even when the situation is hopeless. The Hivari delegation clicked rapidly among themselves before their spokesperson stepped forward. We have calculated the probability of success for a single ship assault on a fleet of that magnitude. The odds are approximately 1 in 47,000. This does not account for unknown variables. Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jake isn't thinking about odds. He's thinking about his nephew's birthday party next month and his niece's school play and all the Sunday dinners he's supposed to have with his sister's family. You can't calculate that kind of motivation with mathematics. Admiral Velketh activated their communication systems and tried once again to contact Jake's ship. UCS Retribution, this is Admiral Velketh of the Galactic Defense Coalition. You are ordered to return to Kepler Station immediately. Acknowledge this transmission. Static filled the command center for several long seconds. Then Jake's voice came through the speakers and Lisa felt a chill run down her spine because he sounded completely calm and in control. Negative, Admiral. I have a job to finish. Commander Sullivan, you are flying toward certain death. Your actions will not change the outcome for New Terra. Please reconsider your current course. Another pause filled with static. When Jake spoke, again his voice carried something that made Lisa think of old Earth, legends about warriors who fought impossible battles because it was the right thing to do. Admiral, do you have family? Velketh seemed taken aback by the question. I have offspring and genetic relations, yes. If someone was about to kill them and you had 30 minutes to stop it, would you calculate odds or would you fight? The command center remained silent. Lisa realized that this was the fundamental difference between humans and most other species in the coalition. The aliens approached problems with logic and careful planning because that was how their species had survived on their homeworlds. But humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world where the choice was often fight or die. I would follow proper procedures and seek assistance from appropriate authorities. Velketh finally replied. Jake's laughter came through the speakers, but it was not a pleasant sound. That's the difference between us, Admiral. When someone threatens my family, I don't call for backup, I become the backup. The communication channel went silent and Lisa knew that Jake had cut off contact with the Coalition command structure. He was on his own, now racing through space toward a confrontation that could only end one way, but as Lisa watched the tactical display, she began to notice something that the alien officers had missed. Jake was not flying directly toward the Reaper fleet. His course was slightly off angle as if he was planning to approach from an unexpected direction. The modifications to his ship suddenly made more sense. Jake Sullivan was not planning to fight a conventional space battle. He was planning something else entirely. Something that only a human would be crazy enough to attempt. Lisa stared at the tactical display in the command center and felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Jake was not flying toward the Reaper fleet in a straight line. His approach vector was curved and complex like he was planning to use gravity wells and asteroid fields to mask his approach. The modifications to his ship made more sense now. Extra power meant better stealth systems and stronger shields. But it also meant something else. Admiral, Lisa said suddenly, I need to access Jake's personal files and maintenance records for the Retribution. Velketh turned their crystalline head toward her. For what purpose, Commander Martinez? Because I think Jake has been planning this for a long time. The modifications to his ship weren't random hobby work. They were preparation for a specific mission. Admiral Velketh activated their authorization codes and granted Lisa access to the station's database. She pulled up Jake's personal files and began scrolling through months of technical specifications and equipment requisitions. What she found made her blood run cold. Jake had not just installed a more powerful energy core in his ship. He had been secretly acquiring components for something much more dangerous: quantum field generators, temporal stabilizers, exotic matter containment units. All the pieces needed to build a weapon that Earth Command had banned from development, because it was too unstable to use safely. Oh no, Lisa whispered as she realized what Jake was planning to do. What have you discovered? Asked Captain Thresh-9, who had been reading over her shoulder. Jake built a quantum destabilizer. It's a weapon that can tear holes in space-time itself. The theory is that you can create a cascade effect that destroys everything in a wide radius, but the technology is so unstable that it usually kills the person using it. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Jake was not just planning to die fighting the Reaper fleet. He was planning to take them all with him using a weapon that could potentially destroy entire star systems if it went wrong. Admiral Velketh activated their communication systems again. All Coalition vessels in the sector are ordered to maintain safe distance from the projected battle zone. Repeat, maintain safe distance. How safe is safe? Asked Commander Aqua 7. Lisa looked at the technical specifications for quantum destabilizers and felt sick to her stomach. If Jake sets this thing off and loses control of the cascade effect, it could destroy everything within 100 light years, including Kepler Station. The alien officers began talking rapidly among themselves in their native languages. Lisa could not understand most of what they were saying, but the tone was clear. They were afraid. Jake Sullivan had become something more dangerous than the Reaper fleet, because at least the Reapers were predictable on the tactical display. Jake's ship continued its approach toward the enemy formation. The Reapers had detected him now and were beginning to adjust their course to engage the lone human vessel. Red indicators showed weapons charging and missile tubes loading. In 15 minutes, Jake would be in range of their guns. Lisa made a decision that would probably end her career in the Coalition military. She ran from the command center toward the hangar bays where her own ship was docked. Behind her, she could hear Admiral Velketh calling her name, but she did not stop running. Her ship was a standard Coalition reconnaissance vessel called the Swift Current. It was fast and maneuverable, but lightly armed. Under normal circumstances, it would be useless in a battle against Reaper warships. But these were not normal circumstances. Lisa ran through the pre-flight checklist faster than she had ever done it before. Engine systems online, navigation computer active, weapons charged, communication array functioning. She sealed the cockpit and requested launch clearance from station control. Swift Current, you are not authorized for combat operations, came the reply from the control tower. Return to standby status immediately. Negative control. I'm going after Jake before he does something that gets us all killed? Lisa fired her engines and launched from Kepler Station without waiting for official permission. As she accelerated toward the outer rim, she activated her long-range communication array and tried to contact Jake's ship. Jake, this is Lisa. I know what you're planning and I'm coming to stop you. Static filled her cockpit for several seconds before Jake's voice came through the speakers. He sounded surprised but not entirely unhappy to hear from her. Lisa, what are you doing out here? This is not your fight. Like hell it isn't. You're my friend and you're about to do something incredibly stupid that could kill billions of people. That makes it my fight. You don't understand. Those Reapers are going to destroy New Terra in 12 minutes. Karen and her kids will die unless someone stops them. Lisa checked her navigation display and saw that she was still several minutes behind Jake's position. She pushed her engines to maximum burn and felt the acceleration press her back into her seat. Jake, listen to me. I've seen the technical specs for what you built. A quantum destabilizer is not a precision weapon. You can't control the cascade effect once it starts. You could destroy New Terra along with the Reaper fleet. I've run the calculations, Lisa. If I detonated at exactly the right distance from their formation, the effect should be contained to military targets only. Should be is not good enough. There are 2.3 billion people on that planet. You can't risk their lives on a theory. Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Lisa's heart ache for her friend. My sister Karen sends me pictures of her kids every week. Birthday parties and school plays and family dinners. She wants me to come visit, but I keep putting it off because there's always another mission or another briefing or another reason to stay in space. Lisa could see Jake's ship on her forward display now. It was a sleek, predatory shape painted in the gray and blue colors of Coalition forces. But she knew that inside the cargo bay was a weapon that could crack reality itself. Jake, you'll get to visit them after we figure out another way to stop the Reapers. But not if you're dead. There is no other way, Lisa. The Coalition evacuation fleet won't arrive for 6 more hours. By then, New Terra will be a burned cinder floating in space. This is the only chance those people have. The Reaper fleet appeared on Lisa's tactical display as a wall of red indicators stretching across space. 200 warships in perfect formation with weapons trained on Jake's approaching vessel. In 3 minutes, they would open fire and the battle would begin. Jake, there has to be another solution. What if we call for reinforcements from Earth Fleet? They could be here in 4 hours. You're not listening, Lisa. New Terra doesn't have 4 hours. It doesn't have 2 hours. It has 8 minutes before those Reapers start bombing civilian targets. Lisa looked at her weapon systems and felt helpless. Her reconnaissance ship carried only light defensive armaments. Even if she fought alongside Jake, they would both die without making any significant impact on the enemy fleet. But then she remembered something from her tactical training at Earth Military Academy. Sometimes the best way to win a battle was not to fight it at all. Jake, I have an idea, but I need you to trust me. What kind of idea? The kind that might get us both killed, but has a better chance of working than your suicide run. Jake was quiet for several seconds while his ship continued its approach toward the Reaper formation. Lisa could see weapons fire beginning to light up space around them as the enemy fleet opened fire. All right, Lisa, what's your plan? Lisa activated her ship's communication array and began broadcasting on all Coalition frequencies. What she was about to do would either save New Terra or get them all court-martialed. All Coalition vessels in the sector, this is Lieutenant Commander Martinez requesting immediate assistance. We have 2 human ships engaging a superior enemy force and need backup. She switched to the emergency channel that connected directly to Earth Fleet Command. Earth Command, this is Martinez aboard Coalition vessel Swift Current. We have human civilians under attack and are requesting immediate military assistance under Article 7 of the Human Protection Act. Jake's voice came through her speakers, sounding confused and alarmed. Lisa, what are you doing? Something that should have been done a long time ago. I'm calling in the cavalry. The response from Earth Command came back faster than Lisa had expected. The voice belonged to Admiral Chen, who sounded like she had been waiting for this call. Swift Current, this is Earth Fleet Admiral Chen. We have been monitoring the situation. Task Force 7 is already en route to your position. Estimated arrival time 4 minutes. On Lisa's tactical display, new blue indicators began appearing at the edge of sensor range. 12 ships moving at speeds that should have been impossible. The newest and most advanced vessels in the Earth Fleet arsenal rushing to the aid of 2 small ships, facing impossible odds. Jake's laughter came through the communication channel, and for the first time in hours, he sounded like the friend Lisa remembered. I should have known you'd have a backup plan. You always were the smart one. The Reaper fleet had noticed the approaching Earth vessels and was beginning to adjust their formation. What had started as a simple colony bombing mission was about to become a major fleet engagement, but Jake Sullivan was still flying toward them with a quantum destabilizer in his cargo bay and 8 minutes left. The space between Jake's ship and the Reaper fleet erupted in brilliant flashes of weapons fire as the enemy formation opened up with everything they had. Plasma bolts and missile trails painted streams of deadly light across the darkness while Jake threaded his way through the barrage with flying skills that made Lisa's heart stop. The Retribution twisted and rolled between incoming fire like a dancer, performing some impossible ballet of death. Lisa pushed her own ship harder as she tried to catch up with her friend. The Earth Fleet Task Force was closing fast, but they were still 3 minutes away from engagement range. 3 minutes might as well be 3 hours in a space battle, where ships died in seconds and entire fleets could be destroyed in the time it took to send a communication. Jake, you need to stay alive until the cavalry gets here, Lisa called over the communication channel. Working on it, Jake replied through gritted teeth as his ship shook from a near miss. But these Reapers are not making it easy. The enemy fleet was spreading out now, trying to surround Jake's lone vessel. Lisa could see their tactical formation shifting as commanders realized they were dealing with something more dangerous than a standard Coalition reconnaissance probe. The modified human ship was moving too fast and turning too sharply for its size. Whatever Jake had done to the engines was giving him performance that should have been impossible, but even impossible performance had limits. Jake's ship shuddered as weapons fire clipped his starboard wing. Warning lights flashed across his instrument panel, and Lisa could hear the stress in his voice as he fought to maintain control. "Hull breach in Section 4, Jake reported. "Shields are down to 60% and falling fast." Lisa activated her own weapons and opened fire on the nearest Reaper vessel. Her light plasma cannons were designed for reconnaissance work, not fleet combat, but every shot that connected was one less weapon firing at Jake. The enemy ship turned toward her with the slow, deadly grace of a predator that had found easier prey. "Lisa, get out of here," Jake shouted. "Your ship can't take that kind of punishment." "Neither can yours," she replied as she rolled her ship to avoid a missile barrage. "We stick together or we die together." The Earth Fleet Task Force finally entered weapons range, and the battle changed in an instant. 12 of humanity's most advanced warships opened fire simultaneously, and space lit up like a miniature sun. The lead Earth vessel was the battlecruiser Defiant, under the command of Captain Morrison, who Lisa remembered from her academy days. Morrison had been her tactical instructor, and he still fought like he was teaching a classroom full of cadets. "All Reaper vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth Fleet," came his voice over the general communication channel. "You are attacking human civilians. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." The Reaper response was predictable. They opened fire on the Earth ships with everything they had while maintaining their bombardment trajectory toward New Terra. Lisa checked her tactical display and felt her stomach drop. Even with Earth Fleet reinforcements, the numbers were still against them. 12 human ships against 200 Reaper vessels was better odds than 2 ships against 200, but it was still a losing battle. But Jake Sullivan was no longer thinking about winning battles. He was thinking about buying time. "Lisa, I'm going to do something crazy," Jake announced over the communication channel. "Crazier than flying into a fleet of 200 enemy ships with an experimental weapon? Much crazier." Jake's ship suddenly accelerated toward the center of the Reaper formation with his engines burning at maximum power. Lisa realized with horror that he was not planning to wait for the perfect detonation point. He was going to ram the enemy flagship and detonate the quantum destabilizer at point-blank range. "Jake, no," she screamed into her microphone. "The blast will kill you." "Better me than Karen's kids," he replied with calm certainty. The retribution screamed through the Reaper formation like a bullet fired from the gun of an angry god. Enemy ships tried to intercept Jake's suicide run, but he was moving too fast and flying too wildly for their targeting computers to track. Lisa watched her friend thread his ship between capital ship hulls and weapons batteries, with skill that defied every law of physics and common sense. But the quantum destabilizer was tearing Jake's ship apart from the inside. Lisa could see strange energy discharges crackling along the hull of the Retribution as the experimental weapon destabilized. Space around Jake's ship began to ripple and bend as if reality itself was having trouble holding together. "Jake, the weapon is going critical," Lisa called out. "You need to eject it now before it destroys your ship." "Negative. I need to get closer to their command vessel. This has to count." Lisa watched the countdown timer on her display and realized they were out of time. In 90 seconds, the Reaper fleet would reach bombardment range of New Terra. In 90 seconds, 2.3 billion people would start dying unless someone stopped the enemy advance. Jake's ship was 50 kilometers from the Reaper flagship when the quantum destabilizer finally overloaded completely. Lisa saw the explosion begin as a tiny point of absolute darkness that seemed to eat light itself. Then spacetime folded inward and Jake Sullivan disappeared into a hole in reality. What followed was not an explosion in any conventional sense. It was as if the universe screamed in pain and rage. The quantum cascade effect spread outward from Jake's position, consuming everything in its path. Reaper ships simply ceased to exist as the wave of destructive energy passed through them. Not destroyed or damaged, but erased from reality as if they had never been built. Lisa felt her own ship caught on the edge of the effect, and suddenly she was flying through a tunnel of twisted space, where up and down had no meaning and time moved backward and forward simultaneously. Her instruments went crazy, and her communication systems filled with static that sounded almost like voices speaking in languages that had never been invented. Then, as suddenly as it had begun the cascade, effect stabilized. Lisa found herself floating in normal space surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the largest Reaper fleet ever assembled. 200 enemy warships had been reduced to scattered debris and exotic matter formations that glowed with their own inner light. Swift Current, this is Captain Morrison. Report your status. Lisa checked her instruments and was amazed to discover that her ship was largely undamaged. The quantum cascade had passed through her position, but somehow left her untouched. Alive, Captain. Shaken up, but functional. What about Commander Sullivan? Lisa looked at her tactical display and felt tears start running down her cheeks. There was no sign of Jake's ship anywhere in the debris field. The Retribution had been consumed completely by the weapon Jake had detonated to save New Terra. Jake is gone, sir. He saved the colony, but the weapon killed him. Negative, Commander Martinez. Check your long-range sensors bearing 27 Mark 15. Lisa adjusted her sensor array and gasped at what she found. They're floating in space about 20 kilometers away was the twisted remains of a ship that barely looked like it had ever been designed to fly. The hull was warped and bent by forces that should have destroyed it completely. But it was intact and life support was still functioning. Jake? Lisa called over the communication channel. Jake, can you hear me? Static filled her cockpit for several long seconds. Then a weak voice came through the speakers and Lisa laughed with relief because it sounded exactly like the friend she remembered. Lisa, is that you? Did we win? We won, Jake. New Terra is safe. The Reaper fleet is gone. Good, that's good. Tell Karen I'll be a little late for Sunday dinner. Lisa flew her ship alongside the wreckage of the Retribution and activated her docking systems. Jake was alive, but his ship was falling apart around him. She had maybe 10 minutes to get him aboard her vessel before his life support failed completely. As she worked to transfer Jake from his dying ship to her own, Lisa thought about what had just happened. A single human being armed with nothing but experimental technology and absolute determination had destroyed an enemy fleet that should have been unstoppable. It was the kind of victory that military historians would study for centuries trying to understand how it was possible, but Lisa understood perfectly. She had grown up on Earth where survival meant fighting impossible odds and never giving up. She had watched her species claw their way from caves to starships through pure, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Jake Sullivan had simply done what humans always did when their families were threatened. He had found a way to win. 3 hours later, Lisa sat in the medical bay aboard the battlecruiser, defiant, watching doctors work to repair the damage that exposure to quantum fields had done to Jake's body. He would recover completely, but it would take time. Time that he would spend knowing that his sister Karen and her 3 children were safe on New Terra. Admiral Chun entered the medical bay and stood beside Lisa's chair. The Coalition wants to court-martial both of you for taking unauthorized military action, and Earth Fleet? Earth Fleet wants to give you both medals for saving 2.3 billion human lives. Lisa looked at Jake, who was sleeping peacefully under the medical scanners. What happens next? Next, we have a very serious conversation with our alien allies about what it means to threaten human civilians. I think they're beginning to understand.